All right, now it says it's broadcasting, so I'm going to assume it's broadcasting. All right. Cool. All right, everybody, welcome. See, that's why I shouldn't have started broadcasting early. Okay, everybody, thank you for coming. This is Inclusive Design, Thinking Beyond Accessibility. Today, I've seen a lot of great sessions. The one right before this was awesome. Chris, again, great job. I'm excited to speak in this building because actually one of the first tech conferences I ever went to was what Nerd Summit used to be, and it was when they were here and the first time they were here, and I was so impressed by all the speakers, so I'm excited to be here speaking. All right, so who am I? My name is Mike Miles. I am the Associate Director of PHP for a digital marketing agency called Genuine. I've been working there for, wow, almost 9 years now. Genuine, full service digital agency. That means we do video and UX and strategy and SEO and design and development and lots of technologies across a couple teams. So we have our .NET team mainly, or not mainly. We have our .NET team, does like Sitecore, Ectron, and Braco, I think. Our front-end team uses a lot of front-end JavaScript libraries and frameworks and CSS and Sass and all that fun stuff. And then the PHP team that I help lead up. And we work mainly with Drupal, but we also do Symfony, a little WordPress, but 99% of the time it's Drupal. So that's my day job. At night, I am one of the co-hosts of the Developing Up podcast. If you haven't heard about it, I think it's a pretty good podcast. It's about career development for developers and the non-technical side of development, so everything that's not involved with code. I snuck some of my stickers on the sticker table downstairs, so if you want to grab one, check it out. We just did an episode on how to lead by example, and the one coming out on Tuesday is actually interview type situations and how to deal with them, so stuff like that. You can find me anywhere on the internet at Mike Miles 86, except for my website, because that's not the URL. But someone told me I should buy that, and I really need to do it. But you know, Twitter, Stack, Slack, GitHub, Google Plus, if anyone uses it. I'm big in the Drupal. No, I'm not big in the Drupal community. I think I am. I'm a big user of Drupal, and I'm mostly involved with the community. So like on Drupal, and I help lead the Boston Drupal meetups every month with an awesome team of organizers. So if you're around, you should attend. All right, enough about me. Let's talk about you guys. I believe that everyone in here has at least one thing in common. And that's we all want to make a positive impact on as many people as possible every day. Whether you're a developer, a designer, a product manager, I don't know what else you could be, UX developer, not even have anything to do with technology. Every day when you go to your job and do something and it's involved with technology, you're looking to build something that helps somebody's life. Does anybody agree with that statement? Wow, 100% of the room. No. All right, like almost everybody. That's right. My goal today is to get you to understand that that's what you do. But it's true. We tried to build things that improve people's lives, whether it's selling a product, putting out a mission statement, building an app that lets people talk to each other. It's all about making positive impacts. And the reason I want to start with this sentence or this idea is because inclusive design, what it actually is planning considerations to ensure that a product, service, or environment is as usable by everyone to the greatest extent possible. It's about making a positive impact on as many people as possible every day. And it's actually based on what's known as universal design, which was a term coined in the 1960s by architect Ronald L. Mace. So this is going to be a little bit of history. Please don't glaze over too much. So Ronald, he was an architect. He founded the Center for Universal Design. And his thought was actually, how do you build mainly public spaces and buildings so that as many people could use them as possible? What considerations do you put in place? So he talked about universal design, building for as many people as you can. Taking that step further was Sloan Goldsmith. He's the author of Designing for the Disabled, and he coined the term barrier-free design. His whole goal was actually moving physical barriers out of spaces. stairs, columns, putting in ramps, making sure that as many people could access the space as possible. And then there's Patricia Moore, who is an industrial designer, famously known for dressing up as an elderly person, restricting her movements and experiencing the world that way, and then reporting on it. Talking about issues she ran into, like not being able to step up on a curb, getting onto a bus, sitting comfortably at a park bench, and using that to inform and improve the world around her. All three of them played a big part in ADA compliance, which led into, in the 1990s, added to digital ADA compliance that we all try to build for. So I want to show you guys an example of universal design that'll lead into inclusive design. It's something everyone here experiences probably every day and you don't even realize it. The sloped curb. So this is part of ADA compliance, where in America, almost every intersection you come to, the sidewalk meets the road. This was built so that people with mobility issues could easily cross the street, whether it's a walker, a wheelchair, crutches, or whatnot. But based on universal design, this actually improves the lives of many other people that it wasn't intended for. We're talking about parents with strollers, delivery people with hand trucks, people distracted by all the crazy news on their phones and not paying attention where they're walking. Thinking about how to improve a situation for a small subset of people improved the positive experience of a wider range of people. So this leads into beyond accessibility for digital work, is because when we build our products, whether it's an app or a website, most of us take into account what we consider accessibility, right? Vision impairments, hearing impairments, cognitive abilities, mobility, the ability to use a mouse or not. And these are great things to plan for, excellent things to plan for. But humans differ across many other methods, or many different ways. So via location and how they can connect and use our products, their gender, their language, their education levels, their age, all of these things impact how they experience the digital world. They actually impact how they experience the real world too. But if we start planning, if we only plan for accessibility differences, we hit a lot of great notes and make our applications usable for more people. If we can think about these other differences, we can widen the range and make a bigger positive impact on more people. So I actually learned about, when I was learning about inclusive design, I came across what's known as the 10 principles of inclusive design. And these were developed by a woman named Sandy Wassmer in the UK. And here they are right here. I'm not going to go through them because that'd be really exhaustive, and we don't have enough time for that. But what's interesting is Sandy was actually contracted by the UK government back in 2009 to help them come up with these principles that they use for every digital product they build. So every time they build a new website, a new application, they have to sit and think about, are these principles being met? And it really improves what they build. So much so that in October of 2010, they added these 10 principles to their e-accessibility action plan for the government. It was really cool stuff. I have the bit.ly link here. I'll have links at the end to Sandy's explanation of these 10 principles. So that's IDX principles. So like I said, this is kind of exhaustive, but learning about this, learning about inclusive design, I came up with something I like to call my 4 pillars of inclusive design. Copyright. Creative Commons Open License 4.0. Richard Stallman would be happy. Well, downstairs. Yeah, maybe he wouldn't be. I don't know how to read him. So feel free to reuse. But these 4 pillars are 4 ideas that I think if we all take it to heart when we build our products, we can build a better digital world for everybody. So it's no user is average. Every user deserves equal access to provide understandable content for every user, and every user deserves our trust and respect. So what I want to go and do now is go through each one of these and explain and show you why these are important and how they help with inclusive design. I don't know if this is considered selling your own product. I hope it's not, because it's just an idea. All right, so no user is average. If we believe that no user is average, what we have to do is from the onset of our project, we have to throw out the idea that we know who's using our application. We have to throw out the idea of the perfect user with the best connection, with knowing how to use the internet. We have to throw that all out. And we have to think who our users actually are and the differences that make them up. So interesting story about average users. In the 1950s, the US Air Force had a new fighter jet. Problem was, it was not performing well, sometimes fatally so, which is really bad. So the Air Force thought, all right, maybe it's our pilots. Maybe they don't know how to fly a plane. Let's switch out all the pilots. Swapped out all the pilots, still poor performance. They said, okay, it's not the pilots. Maybe it's the training material. Let's rewrite the training material. Rewrote the training material, no improvements. Okay, not the training material, it must be the trainers, right? Let's get a whole new set of trainers. No improvements. It took a while, but what they realized was what was wrong was the interface between the jet and the pilot, the cockpit. The cockpit was contracted to be built for the average pilot. The government has a lot of metrics and measurements on all its pilots, so it found the average for every measurement it takes, gave that to its contractors and said, build for this. The problem was the average pilot did not exist. Every pilot had a difference in measurements. So they finally, it took them a while, they threw out the idea of the average pilot and said to their contractors, you have to build a cockpit that works for our shortest pilot, our tallest pilot, our widest, our skinniest, what have you. So they did that, and suddenly, there's a lot of improvements. The pilots could fly the planes, everything was awesome. Let me ask you, how many people here drove here in a car today? Almost all the room. Awesome. How many people here has ever adjusted a seat in a car? Or a steering column, or anything? All right. You have this project to thank for that. The contractors had to build some of the first adjustable seats, adjustable steering columns. That benefited the Air Force, and it went on to benefit the automotive industry and all of us. So cars are a lot safer, easier to drive. So this talk, this story comes from a TED Talk titled The Myth of Average by Todd Rose, who is a high school dropout and a Harvard professor, which is interesting. I think that's awesome. And his talk, really inspirational, but what he boils down to is that if you design for the average, you're literally designing for nobody, as the Air Force found out in the 50s. And I kind of hate right now comparing the 1950s to today with this story, because of things, but it holds true that just like the Air Force found out, we should realize that no average user exists for our products. So what we need to start to do is plan what I like to call for the outliers, beyond the averages, finding the realistic differences and making sure our products work for those, and it'll work for everybody in between. Now, there are a lot of ways we could go about doing this, and there's no way I would be able to explain all the different ways or even know the different ways. But I have a couple of ideas and things to spark in you guys how to think differently. Has anyone here used personas in their projects? All right, about 75% of the room. So a persona is basically you come up with the idea of a person who's going to use your product, and your whole team uses that persona. You give them a name, an occupation, a background, a competency level, stuff like that. Usually you have more than one persona. So if we're creating personas, if you're a UX person or your UX team is creating personas, why don't we add limitations to them? So from the onset, we're planning for people with differences. And what limitations am I talking about? Maybe something somebody can't change about themselves, like suffers from red-green color blindness. It affects how they see your products. Maybe a temporary disability, not disability, limitation. Like has a broken wrist due to a skiing accident, which means they can't easily use a mouse. Or an environmental difference. Does most of their work while traveling, which affects their screen, their attention span, how well they can access and navigate. All these are quick little things you can add to your personas, which have a big impact on how people use their application. And if we do things like this, and we build for something that works for these people, it's going to work for personas who don't have these limitations. We could use an idea like mapping our users based on their behaviors, the behaviors we want them to take. Using something called like an impact map of expected behaviors. This kind of follows Simon Sinek's, I think his last name is, Golden Circle, if you've heard of that. We start with the why someone's going to perform an action, who it is that's going to perform it, how they're going to perform that action, and what the outcome is. If we plan on the behaviors that we want them to take, we can better filter out what we assume about the user. Because most people, no matter our differences, we all have the same types of behaviors. You know, we're all human. So if we believe that no user is average, what's going to happen? Suddenly, we're going to throw out the idea that there's a perfect user and that we know who's using our application. We're going to have to start in thinking about, from the onset, the differences of our actual user base and plan for those. By doing so, we're going to reach a wider audience in every phase of our project. All right, pillar number 2, every user deserves equal access. Just realized I was tapping on here, and that's going to show up on the recording. Sorry, people listening in the future. Okay. If we believe every user deserves equal access, we have to throw out the idea that by 2017, we should have thrown out a long time ago, that we know how people are using our applications, that we know what device they're using it from, what connection speed they have, how much data they're allowed to use. We don't know any of that. And we need a plan for those differences so that we reach more people. We also have to think about how our users interact with our applications, or the ways that we may not realize they do. That was a bad sentence. Interesting statistic, as of 2016, the global internet traffic is from a desktop. That means 55% is from devices that we don't know what they are. They could be smartphones, they could be tablets, they could be refrigerators, they could be electric cars, they could be smartwatches, we don't know. It's only going to get wilder and crazier in the future. But what we can control and what we do know is that these things still render content in the order it gets displayed. So we should make sure we structure our applications, whether it's HTML or web app, in a way that makes sense. In a way that no matter what the rendering engine is, it knows what the elements are and what they're supposed to be used for. So a way we can do this is using semantic markup. There's a small company you might have heard of called the BBC, and they have pages of guidelines on how to use just about every single HTML tag there is, from emphasis tags to list items to title tags. They explain what it's used for, when you should use it, how you should use it, and why. And everything they build, they follow these semantic guidelines. And they're open source, which is awesome. So you can, that's a link to the BBC semantic guidelines. So if we start to use the elements as the way they're supposed to, instead of maybe saying, oh, I'm going to make it a header tag just to make it bold and look good on my design, right? I'm sure no one's ever had to do that before. If we build it using them the way they're supposed to be used, we have a better sense that they're going to be rendered correctly and understood correctly no matter what the device. We can use progressive design to deliver a better experience to our users. Now, progressive design goes back to actually the root of what design is for. It's to emphasize what is important to the user. So we need to start with what minimum we have to do to emphasize whatever we want the user to pay attention to in our application. And then as we get metrics about how users are connecting and what data we can present to them, improving the experience. And finally, we should prioritize what needs to be loaded. What is the most important thing that gets to the user first? Is it that third-party library that loads a carousel? Ugh, hate carousels. Or is it that we can lazy load in the JavaScript if was someone defending carousels when I wasn't looking? All right, good. I have a website for you if you think carousels are a good idea. Should you use carousels.com? The answer is no. So we can prioritize that what is most important is the information that the user needs to know and make sure that is at the forefront of our data. Now, an interesting thing is, I mean, it may be hard if you're a developer and you want to sell to your boss or to your clients, hey, we need to cut down the design. Hey, we need to pay attention on the structure we use and the order we send data. They may not care about that, but what they're going to care about is how Google reads your content. Google cares about semantic markup. Google does not care about your design. Google doesn't really care about your JavaScript libraries or your carousels, if you have them. Google cares about being able to read your data, contextualize it, organize it, and present it to its users and the people who really want to know it. And you want that to happen too, and so does your client or your boss or whoever. So building and structuring in a way that makes sense, structures for Google, for people using different devices. Another statistic, the average global internet speed is 6.3 megabytes per second. The average page size in 2016 is 2.3 megabytes. So that's like half a second load time on average, I think. I'm not good at math. I don't know.
Sorry to clarify, but I want to make sure I have this right.
Yeah.
I do speed a lot and optimization.
Sure.
That's 6.3 megabytes or megabits.
I don't know, whatever the big M little b stands for.
Megabits. I think it's megabits.
Megabits, okay. Thank you.
It's really sure megabytes is actually a lot more.
All right.
Significantly much. If it was megabytes, it would be a lot higher.
I just got the numbers from this data source. I don't claim to know them all. But what I do know is the slowest is the Republic of Mali, which is 0.5. The fastest is South Korea, which is 26.3. The US hovers around 16.3. We're not even the top 10 fastest, which is kind of sad. It is sad. But what this highlights is if we're not paying attention to speeds that our users have, it's easy for us to build for people in South Korea. You know, maybe it's a StarCraft app we're building. I don't know. They'll have a great experience, but anyone with a slower connection is going to have a bad experience. Instead, if we plan for building for people in the Republic of Mali, they'll have a great experience, and everyone who has a better connection will as well. And let me put this in context for you. Amazon, if you were to have the speeds of Republic of Mali, Amazon would take 6 seconds to load. I don't know how long delivery takes, but 6 seconds to load the page. And I'm going to get into how I know that, because what we can do, and these are the most extremes we can do. I'm not saying you have to plan for these extremes, but plan for the differences that your users that you learn actually going to have. Like most of the US, not most, a lot of the US still uses dial-up and DSL. Question?
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Don't forget about the people in the US who have terrible internet connection.
Right. A lot of people have terrible internet connection. I mean, the US as a whole has terrible internet connection. So, except for small pockets. So what we can do is artificially limit ourselves in building. We can use tools to throttle our connections. And that's what I did to test Amazon. Was I opened up developer tools in Chrome, and I said, hey, Chrome, I want to have 5 megabytes per second. Megabits per second. Whatever it was, I matched it. So we can throttle our connections. We can say, I have a poor 3G connection. I'm lost in the woods. Can I load my help app? I don't know. We can also do things like disable JavaScript. Stallman's talking about this right now, I'm sure. JavaScript is a blessing and a curse. It loads on the client side, and it takes a lot of data to send it there. Does JavaScript serve a core purpose in our application, and does it have to? Navigate because they have JavaScript turned off for security reasons or because of the device they're using can't load it. Can they still get to our donations page or our product purchasing page? And that leads into, can someone navigate without a mouse? Is it a CEO, again, who has a broken wrist due to a skiing accident? Can they find out what we're all about and donate money to us? Is it someone who uses a screen reader or eye tracking software? Or I was trying to read about devices that people use. I think there's actually, this is very low tech, but it's like you can attach a stick to your head and then touch the screen with it, no joke, which is a legit way for someone to navigate, right? And that's hard to use. That's not using a mouse. So can someone get the important information? So if we believe that every user deserves equal access, what's going to happen? We have to stop thinking that every user lives in Silicon Valley, has a fiber connection, and is using a Retina display. We have to plan for the different devices people have, the different access people have, and build for what I like to call the worst case scenario. Make sure they have a positive experience so that everybody with a better connection or different experience to them has a positive experience. All right, you guys still with me so far? All right, cool. Pillar number 3, to provide understandable content to every user. Okay, so to us, our digital products that we build, they're works of art. From the code to the design to the UX. You know, we wish there was like digital museums where we could hang them up and say, look at this, look what I built, it's amazing. Our users don't care about that. Our users use our products for one thing, and that's to get information. That's all they care about, no matter what you're building, whether it's a dating app or it is a website for buying the new version of Furby. I don't know. That's showing my age, I guess. So we have to start thinking about what is important to our user is the content, and how do we clearly get that to them and send our message to them. Again, it's not about our design. Our designs are nice and they're helpful, but the core thing is content. So the city of Boston recently redid their website, boston.gov. I know a couple people in this room are working on this right now. My company, Genuine, helped to do a lot of the original development when they launched. And the problem with the old City of Boston website was it was built under the guidance of the city employees. So it was structured based on city departments, sub-departments, and it was all written in by the employees who know their fields and know all the technical jargon. It was not built for the people who are going to use it, the citizens. Not everyone knew what department handled trash and recycling, where to find that schedule, where to find what sub-page of sub-department it was buried in. It was very hard to navigate. So they took the time in rebuilding this to talk to the citizens and be like, what's important to you? Tell us about yourself so that we know who we're building for. And there's an interesting quote from the city's chief of information technology in an interview with the Boston Globe, where they say, the website should act like a helpful human. This is the big difference between the old site and the new site. The old site, it would feel like you're interacting with some sort of lawyer robot that's speaking to you in government speak. Exact quote. I love that. Lawyer robot government speak. And this is talking about how difficult it was for people to understand the content. And they were not getting the information they needed. So as the city realized, we should do that too for our products and make sure that our content is written in a clear and direct way. We want to write for humans by humans. So we can use simple phrasing and avoid jargon where possible. Only say things with as many words as we need to, and not just blah, fill it out. We're not writing term papers. We can pay attention to our font, our spacing, and our line length. With fonts, if you're using serif fonts, things with feet, for people with dyslexic limitations, it's hard to read. Letters run together. With people with small screens, it's hard to read. Letters run together. If you use a sans serif font, if you have clean spacing between your words and your letters, it becomes easier to read. In an interesting study on people and how they read on the web in line length, people read in what's known as an F pattern. Have people heard of an F pattern? So it goes like this, a couple people. Users read the first line of text. They read the second line of text. They read half of the third, a quarter of the fourth. They start to scan, and they miss a lot of the important information. So if we are clear and use simple words and pay attention to how many words we're putting on a page, we help our users from scanning our content and missing important information, the information they want. And finally, we can be meaningful with our content. Again, write for humans by humans. And we can do something like use tools to check what's known as the readability score. So readability, you may have heard people say, that's a 10th grade reading level. That's a college reading level. That's a 3rd grade reading level. That doesn't talk about what education you need to understand the content. It talks about the amount of energy it takes mentally to understand the content. Because, it's a physical process. It takes energy, and people have a finite amount of it. Studies have shown that trying to achieve what's known as a 6th grade reading level provides content that is easy enough to understand for someone who's new to the subject or new to the language, but complex enough for those who are well experienced or very knowledgeable in the subject. So what we can do is, I like using the tool HemingwayApp.com, and I'm not trying to sell you on this. I think like Google Apps may have an integration with readability, and Word does as well. But what you can do with tools like this is you plug in your content, and it'll tell you the readability score. It'll highlight hard to read sentences. It'll tell you words that may have simpler phrases.
Word,
Yeah, Word has a plugin that will give you the readability score, and it'll tell you. So this isn't going to catch everything for you, neither is that, but it's going to give you an idea of where your content currently is and how hard it may be for your users to understand. So we can use things like this to write more clear content. We can remember that one of the purposes of our content is to inform and guide our users, such as displaying useful error messaging. So when something occurs, a user doesn't get afraid like a deer and run away. They understand why the problem, what happened, how they can fix it. Use error messaging as a way to connect with your users and provide them understanding. We can go back to impact mapping and going from the how or from the why to the what they do and plan a user's journey and figure out what content helps guide them to the information they want. And then we can provide contextual relations to content for users, not just something that a program spits out, an algorithm spits out. Going back to the city of Boston, an example of this is on the homepage, they have these main items. And I highlighted here, street cleaning, parking meters, and tow lots. I can tell you from experience of living in the city that if you don't know the street cleaning schedule or the parking meter schedule, you want to know where the tow lots are. They don't necessarily contextually have information, well, they don't necessarily programmatically have information related to each other, but contextually to humans, they make sense to link together. And so if someone wants to know about one thing, they probably want to know about one of the others. So all these things kind of relate to each other. So if we believe in providing understandable content to every user, what we have to realize is content is the most important thing to our users that we can provide to them. So we want to be as clear and direct with it as we can so that more people understand it and receive our messaging. All right, final pillar, to provide every user with trust and respect. If we believe in providing every user with trust and respect, just as we in the last pillar realized the most important thing we give to users is content, we have to understand the most important thing they give to us is their information, and that it is their information. They own it, they control it. We are only asking to see it. So one of the talks that actually got me interested in inclusive design is titled Inclusive Design Excluding No Gender. And this is by Sarah Liren. She's a UX developer out of Sweden, I believe. In her talk, she basically says the easiest way to do inclusive design is to stop asking about gender. And what Sarah talks about is when she meets with clients and she sees they have a form that says, hey, tell us your gender, are you male or female? She asks them, why are you collecting that information? What's the purpose of it? Is it because you just always collect it? Then just get rid of it. You're not doing anything with it. And the underlying message is about being smart with the information we ask to collect, because every field that we provide to a user is a barrier we're throwing up there. So we have to be smart about the information we're asking for and making sure it's something we need to fulfill our obligation of improving their life and delivering a message. Now, there are plenty of good reasons, there are reasons why you might want to ask for gender, and plenty of websites do it. So I am a member of the Drupal community, and when you have a account on Drupal.org, they ask for gender, it's not required, and they give you options because they realize people don't just identify as male or female. They identify different ways, and they give you the options to identify the way you want to. That's meaningful to you so that you control your data, or you don't even have to provide it. So again, this is all about providing and collecting only information that we need. So we want to start asking ourselves, anytime we're asking to collect someone's information, why do we need this? Is it a heuristic we use for personalization? Or is it just something our company's always collected or the client's always collected and just goes into a database? Do we really need to collect it? If we do, what options can we give the users? How can we make sure they remain in control of their content? Because if we give them control, they're going to provide more accurate information, which helps us, back to pillar one, of understanding our users better and building for them. Most importantly is, why should users give this information to us? If we can't answer that question, neither can the users, and they're going to go away. They're not going to use our products. We need to have a compelling reason about why someone should provide us information. Sticking with the gender question, if you create an account on Pinterest.com, and yes, because of this talk, I have a Pinterest account, they ask for gender. It's not required, and they say male or female, but there's an info block, which tells you what they're going to do with it, that they use gender to help provide search results and recommendations. And know what? If you don't identify as male or female, please tell us how you identify yourself, because we want to know as accurately as possible so we can help deliver the right recommendations. They're very mindful about the content they ask for. They're very clear and direct with their content about what they're using it for. And it helps build trust with the users to provide it. Second part is we need to be responsible with that data. Data breaches happen all the time. There's another one that happened this week. And it happens with big companies. And if big companies can't protect their data, there's no way we can. So we should explain how we're going to use data to users, again, to make them comfortable with providing it to us. We have to do this with some things, with like cookie compliance, privacy notices, but we should try to do that with any information we collect. We should let them know, this is why we're collecting it, this is what we're going to do with it. It helps build that respect with our users. We should explain how we're going to protect their data. More importantly, we should protect their data, not just say we're going to do it. You know, PCI compliance is a big deal. PII information and protecting that is a big deal. So we should make sure we're protecting information and letting the users know, yes, we are protecting your info. And finally, we should make sure at all times our users remain in control of their data. Again, it's their data, we're borrowing it, we just get to look at it and peek at it. If they want to get rid of it, they should be able to get rid of it. If they want to change it, they should be allowed to change it. It helps them trust us with their data and build respect of that, and it helps us better know our users and build something that's better for them. So if we believe in providing every user with trust and respect, what's going to happen is we have to recognize that the most important thing our users give to us is their information. We have to be mindful about what we collect, how we collect it, and only collect the data we need. All right, so those are my 4 pillars. No user is average. Every user deserves equal access to provide understandable content for every user, and every user deserves our trust and respect. How many people here think or that they could start using at least one of these pillars on their current project or their next project? All right, that's a good portion of the room. Since you said that, I'm going to make this even easier to remember. Tweetable format. No average, equal access, understandable content, trust and respect. If we start doing these 4 things on every project and considering them in every project, what's going to happen is we really are going to make a positive impact on as many people as possible. All right, so I have some resources for you guys, and we have some time for questions, I believe. I'll come back to this slide in a second, but I have this presentation annotated because I know you're going to experience differently without me in front of you. The slides annotated. Sandy Wasmer's 10 Principles of Inclusive Design. Todd Rose's talk, TED Talk on the Myth of Average. The BBC Semantic Guidelines. And then Sarah Laren's Inclusive Design, Excluding No Gender, which is a really inspiring talk. She also was talked about on podcasts and whatnot. So that I can better improve my presentations for the users who actually experience them, I love feedback. So tweet at me, let me know. If it's constructive feedback, let me know in private. If it's praise, let everybody know. And I want to thank you guys for spending the last session of the day with me when you could have been listening to Richard Stallman. So it means a lot to me that you came here. And if we have questions, we have some time, and I will take them after applause. Question?
Are there any applications, like open source applications for screen readers? Because like it's I'm not be sure like whether people can actually read like when I put up on the web and like because like I'm not quite sure how screen readers parse the line of the page. So.
Yeah, so the question was, are there open source tools for basically emulating screen readers so that you can make sure that it works for people who have those devices, which cost thousands of dollars, which I know you don't want to buy that for testing. There are. I do not know them off the top of my head.
I know.
All right.
I used to work Microsoft Accessibility.
Oh, then you definitely should know.
Yeah. iOS is a very simple one. Microsoft Narrator with Reader, I think it's called on the Mac. It's a very basic one. There's a really good one open source called MBDA. Actually, with like 2 blind programmers.
Oh wow.
Been around for about 10 years, and it's, I believe, completely cross-platform. I think it's Windows, Mac.
Cool. So for the recording, there's an open source one written by blind programmers, NVDA.
Yeah.
So yeah, it sounds like there are a number of tools, and that's a great thing to work with.
And one more thing to learn about screen readers is they actually add a lot more when you're talking about setting up your semantic design or semantic design of the page. You can do things like hit the H key and it'll read all the headers.
Yeah.
Or they can hit 1 and read the H1 header, 2 the H2, all the H2 headers. Stuff like that.
Yeah, so screen readers, they care about semantic markup, and that's why it's important to follow it, because they read headings in order, they read tables, bulleted lists in order.
I just Googled it, NVDA, so it's NV access stuff.
Is it that B like Bobby or V?
No, Nancy, Victor, access.
All right. NV, what was it?
Access.
nvaccess.org. So N as in Nancy, V as in Venus, access.org for the recording.
Home of the free
And it's free. We love open source. Awesome. Thank you for looking that up. I appreciate that. Yes.
A little dovetail on that. Another trick that you probably know about, but I want to mention for the group is disabling CSS is another good way to evaluate whether your page is semantical and ordered correctly.
Yeah, so
Just like
disabling CSS.
JavaScript, you can disable CSS.
I should add that as a point. That's a great point. Disabling CSS also helps to make sure that you're not using elements just for design purposes, that with CSS turned off, it's laid out in a way that makes sense. That's an excellent point. Love in the comments. These are great. Cool. Anything else? If not, I mean, you can applaud again, or I can just stop recording. Yeah, another.
So I don't know if there's any way you've been able to measure this, but over time, have you been able to see how much of the budget might be in addition, like above and beyond, to satisfy these goals?
So the question was, have you been able to use metrics to test or to see how much of the budget helps reach these goals, like to go above and beyond and to implement these things? I'm gonna act like a politician and dance around your question, but with something similar. The best way to do it is to think about responsive design, right? It used to be the case, not that many years ago, where clients would come to you and be like, you say, hey, do you want a mobile website or a desktop website? Two different things, two different prices. Then it's saying, hey, you have a desktop website, you need a mobile website. Then it was, do you want a responsive or adaptive website? Now, most of us don't even give them an option. We just build it in. You're getting a responsive website. And I think that's what we have to do. And a lot of people are starting to do this with accessibility, and it should have happened before, is that you're just building that in. It's not a separate line item. So your question to measuring this metrics.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. Because I know I've been in that mindset in discussing requirements with customers, is that, you know, we talk about the personas, and, you know, when we talk about budget, we mistakenly perhaps say, okay, do we need to do this? Do
Yeah.
we need, you know, X, Y, Z for accessibility? Sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes the answer is no.
Right.
So
And I mean,
even be doing that.
right, you should just build it into your process. And a great line to come up with, I forget who told it to me, but just tell them it's easier to hire developers than it is lawyers. Because you could get, depending on your industry, if you're not doing accessibility, like following WCAG 2.0 or 508 compliance, which I know, you could get sued. And it caught, like this happened to Target in early 2000s, that they didn't build for accessibility. And the Blind Organization of America, I forget their actual title, I apologize. They sued them, and well, they said you have to do this, and Target's like, nah, I'm not going to do it. And they sued them, and they won. And so Target had to make their website accessible, and they had to pay all the lawyer fees and all these other funds, and it cost them 10 times it would have cost them to have developers for a week add, you know, alt tags to images. So I think it's about building that into your development process, your QA process, and your UX process.
Well, I think it kind of goes with like, you know, asking me,
Right.
Said it's just another barrier to like,
Right.
Just assume that you're going to do it these days. Then.
Yeah, if you just build it in and just assume this is what we're going to do. We're going to build you a responsive, accessible website.
You don't need that information. But you're going to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Other question back?
I was just gonna add, I don't have a fully, I think you could definitely make a case thinks that design for accessibility actually benefits all users.
It does.
And those have the specific manifestations in pen. A real obvious example, if you design for people with very low bandwidth, then your site goes faster for everyone. So it's not necessarily an extra cost, it's a benefit you get from at least considering those things. I think there's lots of examples where if it's semantic, it's better in Google, better search results, and there's not like there's 2 or 3 of those. I think you can come up with hundreds of examples where because we thought about the design this way for accessibility, it now works better integrating with these other services, or it goes faster, or it works on a smaller screen, or it fails so gracefully that we develop a positive association with people using it on their phones.
So yeah, I want to capture that because that's great insight for the recording. Is that planning for accessibility has far more reaching effects, which is one of the things I tried to highlight with the slope curve, right? For building for accessibility in the real world benefited way more people. So building for accessibility in your projects has a wider reaching effect of people, many more differences, and like you said, it frees up data to make your website load faster. Some designers may hate that, especially if you do high contrast. Trust me, they hate that, but it helps more people. I agree. Another comment.
So if you're building this into as your best practices in your development process, then to what extent do you have individualized QA to test for the accessibility?
So yeah, the question is, if you build this into your development process, to what point do you have QA work through this? What I can say is there are tools, just like there are tools for testing screen readers, like Wave is a great accessibility testing tool. And you can build that into either automated tests, I think, or just your QA process to run that tool and see where you hit these points.
And then the bandwidth and all these other factors. So it is going to extend your QA process.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're adding it, you're just starting to add it to your QA process, it's going to expand it. But then over time, it's just going to become a part of the process and it's going to work itself out. But that's a good point. Who's next?
I think mine's a quick one. Mine's sort of jump. I once upon a time found a website that you could plug in for color blindness because there's more than one kind of color blindness. Do you remember what it is?
I don't, but I have seen that.
I think go for WA, WK type search terms. We search for those.
Okay.
And you should be able to run across it.
Yeah, so there are websites for testing for the many types of color blindness. I'm actually red-green colorblind, so I appreciate people testing that.
I was just gonna say, I don't know how many people are in the Boston area. There's actually a group that once a year they have a small little conference. The past couple years has been over at the IBM building, but that's the whole focus of the thing is just accessibility. Yeah,
there are accessibility conferences. There's, I know from the Drupal world, there's NedCamp, which is the New England Drupal Camp, and last year in New Hampshire, the keynote speaker, he was actually blind, and he took us through how he experiences the web, and it was amazing because the best website, surprisingly, was Bank of America, and he could navigate anything in Bank of America, but the British beer company, he could not find out any information. So it's seeing those things in real life really puts it in perspective.
Speaking of alt tags, could you talk a little bit about training the people who are actually going to use the CMS that you built with all this great stuff?
So the question was, how do you train people who are going to use this, maybe a CMS, to make sure they include this stuff? It depends on who's going to be the user. Training, maybe I'll jump back to that hire developers, not lawyers line. Learn how to build stuff correctly without messing it up. But I would say documentation is helpful if you can, because a lot of this ARIA tags and alt tags, you can make those in your CMS required fields, so they can't create an image without those. In Drupal 8, that's the case with images, alt tags are turned on by default. So doing things like that forces them to do it, and then eventually it becomes part of their content entry process. Because content editors can get lazy. I totally agree. But if they have to do it, then it makes better content for everybody. Thanks for the extra discussion, guys. I really appreciate it. All right. Any more? No? All right.
No, just more of a comment.
More of a comment.
You know, as long as, because Google has image recognition, that can just, can't just make our whole things for us. That's some kind of, like, more Google to like submit it and give us.
Well, the interesting with alt tags is what I've read about alt tags, it should describe what is going on in the image, which I don't think, what is the deep learning is not there yet.
If there are two bears in the picture.
Yeah, right. So it's like it's both providing the contextual meaning of the image is the most helpful thing you can do, is what I've heard.
Yeah, not all images should really have alt
Right.
text too. There's like background or like, you know, certain images that aren't conveying really meaning and they're just aesthetic.
So that goes back to like providing meaningful content with our designs, is making sure that, you know, we're providing alt tags for images that make sense, not for because screen readers, they shouldn't care about the background image because you know, it serves no purpose to them.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's being smart about that. I mean, that's a great point. I should work that into this talk somehow. I'm going to stop sharing. All right. Well, the broadcast. I'll happily share my ideas.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.